Let's participate and write our future.
The Fui Constitution. You speak, we listen.
All proud Belizean. Let's take a stand and Belizeanize our constitution.
Belizeanize it. Let the Belizeanize it. Belizeanize it.
It's time for you, me, and all our we to live the best life in our country.
It's time for you, me, and we pick me to achieve the best life in our country.
The people want a better beliefs, more trusting and loving beliefs. Freedom, all and the free. With a system where they to we. Justice for everybody. We'll lose them life over tragedies. A government.
Para corresponderle todas sus preguntas que tienen, por favor no teman, pregunten lo que sea y nosotros les vamos a corresponder.
It is our country. It belongs to all of us, not just to the rich, not just to the politicians. It's for each of us. And this event tonight, I said we've put together, we have a team that is here, and we will play some videos on the Constitution. They are not long, and then we will have a heart-to-heart conversation. We are recording everything because we want to capture what you have to say, and then we will take that back to the People's Constitution Commission, whose job it is to put together a report from all across the country.
Vamos a estar grabando esta noche para finalizar todo y después vamos a hacer un reporte con las preguntas y las correspondas que ustedes nos dan, solo para tener un comparison, para ver cómo nosotros podemos mejorar así entre nuestra comunidad, ¿ok? Otra vez, muchas gracias por su paciencia.
Reference this Mr. talking about with this law or whatever, right? All right, I know for a fact the Indians got a liar what is Greg Chuck, and before Greg Chuck we have the GG right now with Florel Salam. What did the government do to them? They doesn't want make these people fight for their own people, then give them a position. What does it mean like that? So that means we are nothing, we are useless as we got the own kind of fight for we, like with criminal, like where he talk about children are being dead or whatever, like Belize right now. It's not a lie or whatever, I just making up, but Belize City right now, who run the gang? It's the Prime Minister. If the Prime Minister can't pay this gang now, that's what the fighting will be coming. I being honest, because I got friends where I been gang, and if they have to get the money from half of that minister. No offense, I talk with facts, and if right now we got Greg Chuck, then take me from here. We don't have nobody right now for represent we the tribe right now. We have a fight.
All investors coming into the country, it's just taking from Belize. And so even when it comes to I just found out that the Chinese, the Asian, they have a beer too. I don't know about the mind beer now, they're going to, a soft drink. And that was shocking to me because previously dating an Asian female, I know they come, they take out of the country, they take back home. They don't, it's like us going to the United States. That's what a lot of people see Belize. They just take and take back. So if I never hear, I could be wrong. Any Chinese we give $10,000 for La Rutamaya race, or I don't see that. I don't see it happening. So if they're just taking and taking, what are we going to get back as Belizean? Because we're from here. It's like what they said, like my dad said from America, you know born here, you know about something else. We born here, we don't know about no else, the other for we. And that was my personal take up on it. I don't really see the country, they go, I'm from a bachelor's degree in marketing, the marketing job, like 1% you get. You go to school and you find job in a year, feel like, where we go? And Corona right there prove that. We're not self-sufficient. we're not self-sufficient because we lock on everything. Prices start skyrocket because we don't make nothing. We bring. We spend billions of dollars to bring in stuff, and with our country.
The preamble on keeping God, right, within our Constitution is very important. But just as what my teacher was mentioning about, ensuring that if they singing national anthem first and then doing the prayer, it was something small, but it's something that made me think. We claim that God is the sovereign of our nation, right? But a lot of institutions and schools are not making sure that God is the one that leads out, and all the laws are founded because of the principles that God has given us. And I think that's something very important to look at. In this institution, we make sure that they know that God leads everything here. But there are many other schools that they're slowly drifting away from that. Some schools that don't even pray, don't even do anything in regards to devotion. If we claim that God is leading the nation and our youths coming up are not getting this type of nourishment, then, they won't have any concern for it, say in the future that this becomes a challenge again. Like they want to challenge whether or not we keep it in within our Constitution. So I think that's very important for our educational institutions to honor that and to be able to teach it to the youths that are going to come up to be the new.
I had a few concerns earlier, but some of my colleagues already asked you guys, and you tend to answer them. But before we end the night, I had one other concern. What laws can be amended towards our law enforcement officers so that they don't feel as if though they are the law? I feel as if though the iceberg between the Constitution and the people are the law enforcement officers, because they are here to serve and protect, and at times they may I'm not bashing all of them because it's not all of them, but at times they feel as if though they are the law, and it can even boil down to maybe when they are recording their data, maybe on the crime scene.
Nos apocan diciéndonos que nosotros perfectamente sabemos que vivimos en un país de habla inglesa y tenemos que hablar inglés. Automáticamente nos bajan la moral diciéndonos que tenemos que hablar inglés. Y se refieren las autoridades, cualquiera persona o uno va a una oficina, de igual manera nos apocan con el idioma. Entonces yo pienso que ese es uno de los problemas más graves que nosotros como comunitarios tenemos, no solo acá en esta comunidad, sino en general.
Y usted se refiere no solamente al momento de estar detenido, sino más allá de acudir a ciertos servicios básicos y yendo a las instituciones. Okay.
Así es.
Okay.
A la oficina que uno vaya, ese es, lo intimidan a uno de esa manera, pues dicen, I no understand Spanish, tú sabes que aquí hablamos inglés, inglés tienes que hablar. Entonces yo pienso que si estamos hablando de derechos humanos, yo pienso que por ahí debería de empezar el respeto al derecho idioma de nosotros, no como seres humanos. El derecho al ser humano.
Sí.
Así hable inglés y español o el lenguaje que hable.
Que no debería de ser una razón por la cual se limita su acceso a ciertos servicios, ¿verdad? En algunos países le puedo decir que el modelo también reconoce, de hecho, el derecho a uno tener su idioma, ¿verdad? A preservar su idioma también, especialmente cuando estamos hablando de los idiomas indígenas que también sufren de limitaciones. Entonces creo que es un buen comentario para explorar cómo la Constitución puede dar mayor protección a las personas, poder hablar en el idioma, en su idioma, su mother tongue, ¿no? En el idioma, su idioma primario, creo que se dice, no sé. Pero
and then you mentioned about the separation of powers. Basically, you're saying that if you are a senator, then you should not be able to be a member of cabinet or whatever. Well, that is something that I noticed the chairman had written down, which is an interesting point. And I also heard the election of senators. They're supposed to be elected. Then we are looking at a different system. So you are, I don't know if you noticed because you did not say it, but you are looking now at you are perhaps discussing republicanism.
We have been promoting and talking about anti-corruption laws. The anti-corruption laws. I would really want to see that the committee sits and merges these into the Constitution, the anti-corruption laws. Why? Because I am perusing to this, and I believe that our brother Otilo also touched on it, and the brother Valentin, on the ministerial power. We can see that in page 11. You know, it has the ministers. The ministers have reserved the discretion, the ministerial discretion. Whether it is that ministers would have that discretion, I believe that the Constitution should spell out the limitations on this power, on these discretions. So I believe that they need to be spelled out if it is to stay. I would rather have it removed, you know. So I'm appealing that the table sits, looks at the anti-corruption laws, and merges it into it. And I believe that once that is done, you would really be serving our country. Thank you very much.
I am saying that I only come here with questions. I don't come here with solutions. Because most of the people in power, they say they have solution to poor people problem, but poor people have a lot deeper questions than
more
just
questions than I have answers. So first of all, can the ministers, past and current candidates who will run for office, have a detailed budget for where and on what the money donated or sponsored for them is used in? Can it be established that the Integrity Commission can be in charge of producing results for this year and the ones to come? May it be noted that the last official report made on people in office being delinquent was in the year, to be specific, May 23rd, 2022, when Mrs. Andrea McSweeney McCoy was in power. She was the chairperson for the Integrity Commission. And the names of the politicians who refused to show their bank statements were published by the Integrity Committee in the Amandala newspaper.
We have a beautiful constitution. The problem is that we don't know it. And because we don't know it, the people who know it, they break the law right in front of our faces, and we actually clap and applaud them. I wanted to see if I can make some input on this paper as well. It speaks to the legislature, the National Assembly, House of Representatives and Senate, electoral system. I think that it would be remiss if we don't put the word oversight on it. I think it would be remiss. The primary function of the legislature is oversight. Unfortunately, in Belize, it is a function that it doesn't do. Well, maybe I shouldn't say do, doesn't. That doesn't mean, none at all. But it's very limited in what it does. I believe that if the oversight, we have 13 oversight committees at the National Assembly. And it is only when you meet with the teachers that that oversight committee functions.
Get into all this stuff about changes because this is going to take forever. But I want to say that most infringements happen down in the bottom financial area of our people. Uneducated I'm not going to go so far as say uneducated, but poor or educated people that does not understand their rights, or if they do understand their rights, are not able financially to address their rights. And there are no groups of people that will address this for them. If you are not able to go to Dickey or Courtney or Dean Barrow, you're up the creek. Your problems is hardly ever addressed. And this is one of our greatest problems we have. Because we know very well most of these infringements happens down in the bottom financial status of our community.
With what is currently listed as a fundamental right to work. Because you don't just born today and then you wake up tomorrow and you can work, right? There are certain conditions you have to meet to be able to get gainful employment. So that's, I just wanted you to talk about, you know, whether or not you see a parallel there, given your logic about the acquired right to vote. So that's the first part. The second part is that the right to vote is a fundamental right as it is slated now. What then do we have to say about our unemployment rate?
Start off with was the access to the Constitution. And I'm going to start off with that because even before you talk about changing the Constitution, you have to ensure that the Constitution itself is accessible. We have a lot of people in remote areas that have never heard about Belize Constitution because they don't teach it in schools, which is another issue I'm going to touch on. When we're talking about access, and Belize has signed on to one of the conventions that spoke on access to justice. If you do not have access to the Constitution that actually stipulate what your rights are, what the laws are, and then there is a part of the laws that says ignorant to the law is an offense.
So it's obvious at times that this country is being run as a dictatorship. The only time we see the government is come election time. The last time I saw my area representative was when he was lobbying for my vote. Since then, he now drives past me in his Land Rover and just honks his horn. Right? I haven't seen him on foot since then. All I'm saying, after election, no one comes back to the people. No one. What we do is sit in office for 5 years, behind closed doors, preferably, with security guards outside to stop the citizenry from meeting with our elected officials.
Nevertheless, it's good to have this reform. I have this query, which is, you mentioned that most of the people of Belize don't know their constitution, right? I was in Standard 4 some years, and I looked into this with my students. But it was just an outline, right? Basically what you were saying, the different parts in it, the branches, the rights. And it saddens my heart that I come from Sartaneja village, about 2 hours travel. And I've experienced this. When I was very young, we had some search entries from police. They would just enter a house, search, and move on, right? When I was younger, I learned about the need to have a document which has all that information. And when I learned this, they finally stopped on the door and they had to show this. And I was happy that I could help my family making a change on that. Right? And after they went and they came back and they showed us the paper, and they finally came in like people, because sometimes they do not respect these rights that we have. And as citizens, we don't know them. Right? I don't want to offend the high school teachers, but I don't recall getting any information on my constitution. Right? And now that I'm teaching to my kids, I try to go in depth, right, to have a deep dive with them and try to explain these things to them. but they are very young. And as you said, not all students have that opportunity to attend high school. So something has to be done, right? Something has to be done. Our people need to be educated on knowing their rights, knowing their constitution, their constitutional rights, what it entails.
I really do love and appreciate our policies, and one of it insists that the person who desires to go in the classroom must be qualified. It's a lot of work to remain qualified, but the children do deserve a qualified, passionate, committed, educated teacher. They deserve nothing less. In the same way, that's what this country deserves in its leaders of the country. I believe that something needs to be adjusted, some amendment needs to be made. I believe some colleagues told me this exists in some countries. I don't know why it doesn't exist here, but we need to consider that our politicians are qualified to lead the four corners of this country. If teachers are expected to be qualified to manage the four corners of a classroom, and with their principals and administrators manage the four corners of a school, even more so, that expectation should be given upon those who desire to run a country. You want to run the country and you have no qualifications for the ministry that is given into your hands. It really is insane. And that's one of the reasons why I believe we're not being as effective as we can be in the ministerial areas. Listen, a minister is called a minister because you offer a service. You are a servant. They don't operate as that. Instead, many are operating as if though they are to be served. And to be honest, colleagues, some of us have caused them to believe that because we worship them.
A situation that took place about 2-3 years ago with the indigenous people of Belize. And this situation for me, when I heard the final decisions made by the court, for me personally, it was like a slap in the face, in the sense that at the end of the decision, certain indigenous group was even granted finances from the government because their claim was that they were indigenous. For me, I was taken aback because it is like a downgrade, in a sense that because you or your ancestors were not indigenous to this country, they cannot request certain amenities. Right? Yes, because we came here or brought here, we were brought here. So, yes, for me that was an attack to the Constitution itself. So how can the Constitution reflect procedures that will prevent things like this from keep happening or occurring?
Result in the material resources of the community being so distributed so as to subserve the common good. And I had a question there. I said, what is it in the Constitution that ensures that happens? And what happens if it is not occurring, like punishment or consequences? And I'm just asking that because it says the economic system must result in the material resources of the community being so distributed as to subserve the common good. And I think right now in Belize, that not happen. Okay? But what is there to ensure it happens, or at least try to make sure it happens? And if it isn't happening, are there any consequences or anything addressed there?
And I wanted to raise two concerns about two things that we might possibly put into the Constitution to limit foreign influence over Belize and to limit government exercise of power during emergencies. The Constitution is consisted of checks and balances. So would it be possible to make a provision in the Constitution that would prevent Belize from signing international treaties and agreements without approval from the legislature? Because too often we find out that woke agendas, foreign ideas about family, marriage, sex, gender, all those things coming from the outside, that Belize is obliged to go by them when Belizeans haven't even voted on it. So is there a way to put in the Constitution a way that we can require that no international agreement can override the Belizean Constitution and cannot override Belizean law?
But there is a thing called public morals, decency, way of life. We as a Belizean people know that we have some tenets, and it goes to the survival of your family. With respect to indigenous people, we Creole indigenous, how we not indigenous in our own country. So when they come more indigenous and change the Constitution, that to my mind should never have happened. And I have said, but maybe people who are here, if I had a 62nd recommendation, it would be, with respect to the Constitution, all Belizean rights equal, and if you're indigenous, Creole indigenous, so now put that in a one part and halfway in another part. Stop step power because we're not a beg pardon.
GN.
Mr. Vasquez, I agree with you when you spoke about the fleshing out of from the preamble going out. Prior to the 1999-2000 report, Dylan Vernon and et al., the word disabled wasn't even mentioned in the Constitution any at all. And in my interview, I spoke about the inclusion of the disabled, but not just the word, because the word is there. I'm talking about the fleshing out, because out of all the groups in Belize that are vulnerable, the disabled are the least, the ones at the bottom. And government cannot run away from this figure, because 15% of our population are disabled in some form or another. And post-COVID, like you look at the news and you would see things happen and you say, what's wrong with these people in their head? What's happening? A lot of it goes back to mental illness as well. So mentally, a lot of people are suffering and acting out in some weird ways. And what we find, disability also encompasses elderly people, for example. Because when you get elderly and you're not able to walk and get around, you are in need of help. So that falls under disability as well. So that 15% of our population, which means out of the last count that we're at 400,000, I believe, it means that about 60,000 of our people in this country have a type of disability. The budget that is set aside for disability in Belize, there's no line item for disability, none in the budget. It is set aside as per Women's Department, and then some it filters down to the disability desk. And they strictly deal with advocacy and lobbying, they say, which is not enough.
Mr. Tios, Mr. Chairman, we are not allowed to give the solution.
No, I'm just discussing.
But we are asking you to speak into the camera and say how can something like that be resolved. That's what we need to hear. So that is the statement of the problem. Mm-hmm. Now, how would your organization like to see that remedied?
Well, several ways.
So as a living document, how did Belize acquire the Constitution? Who wrote it, and who has the white paper, which interprets the meaning of the Constitution?
Luckily, I have been given this form to fill, no? In which it seems that I might have had an idea of what might have gone on, no? But it's asking the same question the same three questions that I had in mind, no? And before I proceed to ask my questions, no, I have been reading a lot, no? I tried to read a lot, and I ended up with this document, the Political Reform Commission of 1998, no? In which a lot of changes were made, you know, suggestions to the government to amend, to legislate, to repeal different acts of our laws, no? But tonight we are here to specifically focus on the Belize Constitution, Chapter 4, right? And I have been asked by this, specifically in this forum, what are 3 things that preoccupy me, right? So I have listed this, right? Good governance, independent institutions, and transparency and accountability. Why have I listed this, right? In my personal opinion, the way our constitution is set, right? The way we are governed is very important. We have 3 branches of government which they have mentioned in the presentation. And I think that if these are not working in conjunction with each other, then what is stated in our preamble will never be achieved. We will never be able to fulfill our rights, and the Constitution would be just, I don't know if it's a living document, but without these proper changes in place, then how can we as the citizens be able to achieve these rights that have been promised and ensure that our rights be protected, which are guaranteed in the preamble, right? So, good governance. Why good governance? Good governance because the persons that manage government, if they do it in the wrong manner, then we will be violated our rights. Why? We cannot achieve our right to access an education. We will not be able to achieve our right to access a piece of land, to access health, right? To access the courts if they are not independent institutions, right? And of course, if there is no transparency and accountability, which in parentheses I would put corruption, then I believe then we will not head nowhere, right? So these are 3 areas that I wish be taken into consideration, right? That will then lead us to achieving our full potential, our full rights that are guaranteed to each and everyone and each Belizean citizen, right?
We want to safeguard things that are good about our Constitution. This is a jewel. This is a jewel. Definitely Belize is an amazing country, and somebody who comes from outside Belize can appreciate often what's here, maybe even more than the locals sometimes. And one reason it's a jewel is because this country is really built on faith and family. George Price was a man of faith. This guy didn't go to Mass every week, every Sunday. He went to Mass every day. And so his values, which were the Belizean values of his day in 1981, were really enshrined in that original Constitution. I think there's a lot of good in the Constitution we want to keep and then shore up other things. Mr. Usher's point was excellent. The Constitution doesn't give us these fundamental rights. It defends, it protects these fundamental rights. So we had a law, for example, that was almost passed about 4 years ago, the Equal Opportunities Bill, that really, I think, really went against the sense or the sensibility or the beliefs of so many Belizeans, right? And it would have been, I think, if it had passed, it would have been something that would have taken away rights in the name of giving rights to an infinitesimally small minority. It would have taken away rights from families and churches. I think that the Constitution protects the family. We need to ensure that it continues to protect the family, protect marriage. Marriage is under attack internationally. The family is under attack internationally, not just in Belize. And so we want to continue to be a jewel, be a place where families are favored, where there's stability in the family, and the law can help in that regard.
I actually took time out of my schedule to come here this morning because I find that this process is most important. While it is, persons might be alarmed by that statistic that was quoted in terms of 98, I think it was, % of persons have not picked up the Constitution, have not read it. The truth is that that figure probably is in fact accurate. While I can tell you that the Ministry of the Public Service, and now I'm talking from a point of view of a public officer, has engaged in teaching public officers or introduced them to the Belize Constitution. There has been just most recently 2 cohorts of public officers, about 80 public officers, who have just gone through that introduction, among other things, of the Belize Constitution. The truth of the matter is, I was the person who did that lecture, and it was amazing how much of them did not know what the Constitution was saying as it relates to basic things. I applaud the Ministry of the Public Service, but that's just one set of public officers. We're not talking about those who are not taking the promotional and clerical exams. We have CEOs, we have HODs, we have a number of other public officers who are not exposed to that training, who are not being exposed to what the Constitution is in fact saying. So that my questions to the Commission is, that is a captive audience. You don't have to go to every nook and cranny to find those persons. So I would ask that somehow in their sensitization, something be included. Yes, MPS is doing its function, but it's only as it relates to some officers. Remember that these are the persons who have to implement the very provisions of the Constitution, particularly the fundamental rights and freedom. If they don't know it, how are they going to be properly executing it, right? And that is it. You find that I find knowledge is the key, and when you know, you're able to defend yourself, you're able to make representation, you're able to speak up, you're able to say to X, you know what, you're not doing the right thing, you're not doing what you're supposed to do, right? The Constitution does not make provisions for that. There are things that are happening that people are just sitting by and not realizing that in fact some of these things are in fact violating the Constitution. I want to give a simple example. Most recently I was listening to the radio and I'm hearing, and sorry, I don't mean to offend anybody, but I heard that the commandant of BDF was saying that soldiers couldn't go to a certain institution, putting out that instructions, right? Now, while it is, they are a part of that uniform organization, the Constitution provides for freedom of association and freedom of movement, and that cannot be taken away from them. I remember asking these public officers, tell me what is wrong with that, and none of them could associate it with the Constitution, which tells me clear that they're not aware. Well, in fact, they didn't. You see, Mr. Bradley asked about who have their Constitution. Imagine we're doing a Constitution class and they're not bringing their Constitution. That in itself tells you something, because the core of it is that we're doing an introduction to Belize Constitution. So what do you bring? A Constitution, right? So that, Mr. Chairman, I am hoping that in fact part of the sensitization address the very people who are supposed to be enforcing the provisions of the Constitution to the general public out there. Not that the general public don't need to know, because yes, they do. They do need to know what the Constitution is saying, right? So next to the Bible, and I agree with that, your Constitution comes thereafter, because that is how you function as a citizen of this country. So I'm grateful for this exercise, and I'm hoping that more people will participate in this very important function. At the end of the day, we have to decide what it is that we want to be governed by. This is ours, and we need to take ownership of it. Thank you.
Thank you so very much.
I want to
address, but I want to speak to the two commissioners first and everyone up there. I remember George Orwell said that he hates the way politicians speak, and I hate the way you people speak because you speak too much like politicians. And another line would probably be from Ludwig Wittgenstein, right, who said that anything that can be said clearly, and whereof one cannot speak, thereof one shouldn't speak. Can you hear me? Anyways, I just want to say in regards to our friend at the front who mentioned like the cross-section of society thing and that large groups and small groups each have like one representative within the commission, right? He said that, and I totally agree with that, but the commission is like a cross-sectional thing, right? In like in the North US, we talk about intersectionality a lot, right? How different groups of people can be, different people can be a part of different groups. And I'm a part of a lot of the groups that the People's Commission represents, and I've tried to reach out to those groups before, and those people never ever respond. I think you have terrible leadership at the top as well. And one last thing, if I have like 30 more seconds, to Mr. Professor, I think it was Robert, is your first name? You said that the people who made our Constitution loved us very much, and I want to reference the Pink Floyd song, Mother. Mother talks about a mother that loves her child a lot, but she still hurts him a lot. And just because our Constitution is beautiful and poetic, I could say it, Nietzsche is poetic, right? God is dead and we have killed him and the blood is on our hands and we'll never find enough water to wash it away, right? That is very poetic, very beautiful, but I don't think it's practical or pragmatic or solves any problems. And this whole participate and whatever thing has been like preaching platitudes to me when I have heard like no real solutions to any problems. All right, and that's the problem this country has, and I just wanted to, put that forward.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your comments.
Yeah,
yes, sir.
So man just to express itself. Everybody express itself differently.
Yes.
Right. Thanks for this whole. Yes, thanks for the whole information and everything. Right. A recommendation that I would like to see though, because a lot of young people or a lot of believers in general, they don't read as much as they're supposed to. Right. This is the first time I actually looked through a constitution book, right? And I'm pretty sure that almost half of the population, or maybe more, not even look through the constitution book if they are not a lawyer or an attorney or something like that, right? So I think that it's good to maybe have a follow-up session, like maybe just like what you're doing today, educating us and all of that we could come back and based on what we read, we review and we give with feedback. Right, I think that's something that would help this process, right? Secondly, incorporating with what the pastor was saying just now about access to land, right? In Belize, if you don't have money, well, to get a piece of land, you either have to have money, you either have to have connection, or you either have to have inheritance. You have a lot of people in Belize who come from broken homes, right, who not have any other thing, not have no money, not have no inheritance or anything like that, nor no connections, right? I think that something in the Constitution would be good if we would include that. I don't like use the word entitle, right, because that's a strong word, especially in at this time.
But right to land.
A right to have a right to land.
Okay.
Like for example, in Mexico, but before I get to Mexico, if a foreigner, somebody from America, want to come to Belize to live the retirement dream, all they need to have the money, right? And they could get what the prime piece of land, they could buy a cave was supposed to be protected, versus somebody who grew up borderline poverty or at the poverty level. Very difficult.
Secondly, maintain and make explicit that the Constitution is based on human nature and embodies the natural law tradition. Protection of national sovereignty from unwanted pressure of international mechanism standards. Upholding the sanctity of life, particularly by protecting the unborn and eliminating the death penalty. Adding constitutional protection for churches to provide an integral religious formation in the schools they manage, introducing reasonable preference in hiring curriculum,
In hiring and curriculum?
Yes.
Yes.
And then guarantee full respect for the rights of parents in determining the education of their children, including the freedom to resist sexuality education programs that are incompatible with national, cultural, and religious beliefs. Okay, these are the concerns I have as a Christian. And yeah, thanks for letting us voice our concerns.
The idea is that the Constitution is not going to be changed. That's not the idea. The idea is that it's going to be better. The suggestions that we bring forward is going to be for that, to improve it, to make it better for all of us here in Belize. I am a Christian Catholic, and I think that something that should always stay in the Constitution is the supremacy of God. We don't want to go the path that other countries are going, like, for example, Nicaragua right now, where there is a clear persecution of the church, and there are priests and bishops in prison right now. Okay, so we have to learn from the other countries. Decía, yo soy cristiano, católico, y una de las cosas que nunca debemos de quitar la Constitución es la supremacía de Dios, que creemos en Dios. Somos un país netamente cristiano, y eso nunca se debe de quitar. Tenemos que mirar el ejemplo de otros países que de alguna manera pues lo han hecho. Por ejemplo, Nicaragua, que persigue a la iglesia, tiene tantos sacerdotes, hasta un obispo preso. Entonces, eso es hacer a un lado a Dios y poner al hombre en el lugar de Dios. Eso. También nuestra Constitución debe de sobresalir la familia, como es conocido. El hombre, la mujer, los hijos. Eso no debe de cambiar, nunca. Ni por presiones de afuera. We know the family unit is a man and a woman, and that should not change. We understand that there are pressures from outside. Okay? And many times the governments listen to these pressures from outside and change the Constitution. Yeah? And we are praying that this will not happen to Belize.
Right now, cabinet is basically God. If the cabinet gets together tomorrow, they met today, actually, they decided that they would not give the extra $550 telephone allowance, Mr. Bradley. I don't know if you saw the cabinet excerpt. But my point is that cabinet now, 650? 600, okay. Cabinet can now decide things and they're done. It moves with efficiency, but I think Belize has now come to a place where we need to slow down. It is okay to slow down. It would have been okay during COVID if the government if the Minister of Health had to go in front of Parliament and explain to him why we need these things. Then our area representative could have said, look, in our area, my area is more conservative. We are more sparsely populated, we think differently, we don't agree. And it would certainly make Belize more diverse. I know it would make us slower, but I think that if we are serious about accountability, then we will make our area representatives, the legislative part of government, we will make them our watchdog and let the executive branch take orders from the legislative.
How can we prevent laws from this being passed again in Belize? And does this law currently respect the Constitution of Belize? I don't know how to find the correct chapter and verse as our dear attorney here can. However, I can read you the law as somebody did send it to me recently. And it states, a person who uses any threatening, abusive, profane, or obscene, or indecent, or insulting words, and it continues to say, whether calculated to lead to a breach of peace or not, such several offenses being committed in a street or public place, or in a private enclosure or ground, whether directly or within hearing of a person acting in a judicial matter, official of law, National Fire Service, a public officer, a person a prison officer in the course of duty, a teacher in the course of duty, a member in the media in the course of duty, an elected official, that person commits an offense and is liable on summary conviction to imprisonment for 3 years. So literally just an insulting word that is heard by any official could be sufficient for someone to be imprisoned for 3 years. Does this actually fall under the Constitution? Can this be allowed? Do we not have any freedom of speech in Belize? In the UK, I know they have lost their freedom of speech. In the United Kingdom, they imprisoned that person, I believe in 2016, for 3 years because he posted a video online of his dog saluting after he said Heil, which obviously is a horrible thing to do, but it is funny nonetheless to some people. But I don't believe it was necessary to imprison him for 3 years for such a simple joke. I am concerned that the law that was passed in 2022, the Internet Protection Bill or whatever it's called, I read a lot of it, and a lot of it contains dangerous stuff like this, where if our young people will be sharing funny memes on the internet, they can be imprisoned for many years because it became considered insulting words. Is there something we can put in the Constitution to make sure this doesn't happen? In my opinion, this would be my statement: nobody should be imprisoned for any words they say ever unless they are directly related to any real and immediate violent threats. All words, you cannot have freedom of speech if you're gonna control some words. Unless, of course, I will leave that small space there if they are directly threatening. Could I have some feedback on that?
That we should look at the issues that we have with our current Constitution. I think there are some very glaring issues we have. One of them is the Senate has become just a rubber stamp of the political party that won the election. And currently the Senate is made up of 5 appointed by the party that came in power, 4 that are the opposition, and then you have some that are the various sectors of government, public service, public life. But it basically becomes the stamp of whoever is in party. And we have a problem that way. I think one of the things about representation, proportional representation, we also have an issue that we don't have really local government. The way I understand it is that we only have 2 villages in Belize that actually have boundaries. So that the larger government can come in and make decisions for local areas, because there isn't any real entity that's our local government that has any power. And you guys correct me, there's things that I'm learning, but I think the only revenue a village gets is through liquor licenses, and that leaves no money and a very poor village structure. Anybody here who can confirm that what I'm saying is right? A village will get money based on liquor licenses. That's set up for a problem. That means that the village can't help to discern or help decide what will happen in their own village, that the larger government who just won everything gets to decide who's going to come in and take this and take that and take that. And they don't have a water structure, they don't have a garbage structure because there's no revenue. So if you want to talk about proportional representation, we could also talk about proportional representation by peoples that are in certain areas. You'd get a lot more autonomy for yourself if you had a smaller government. And maybe we would have more representation in our government and pick up more people who are from different, the various ethnic groups or genders or whatever, if we had a different kind of Senate. So that maybe you would be able to elect some senator.
I perused through the Act for the families and children, child abuse rights of the children, and so forth. So please correct me if I'm wrong. Like again, I'm still learning. However, certain situations that had presented itself where I was called to, where a child beat the elderly or his grandparents because they don't want to adhere to what they're saying. They got mad, so they took it out. When I look at the act, it's saying that basically stating that these children has more rights now than the parent. What, how and when was that changed, and how can we rectify that? Because in my opinion, we are losing our youths because the law gives them more rights than us as the parent.
I was actually hearing Tiki Bradley talking regarding our constitution. He actually talked about our constitution actually started to get into the country from since 1981. Is that correct? All right. I was also kind of meditating regarding our constitution and also the supremacy of God that he mentioned. There is something there that actually triggers me and it concerns me. And the principle is the one that actually we should keep. Even though if you still continue to reinforce the constitution, but it's not based on what the principle is, which is the supremacy of God, it would be no good for us. There is a lot that is going on through this country that is backing up from what we're supposed to be. Like he said, our country is not going forward, it's going backwards. And people like up there, like they know the Constitution, but they are not going by what the Constitution is. We, the poor people, the people who do not study and the people who do not know about this are the ones that are always the victim, because they use those people up there use the Constitution for their favorism. They can always make money and they can get richer by using the Constitution. A liar would always lie for him to get more money, to convict someone, or to get people out from trouble that they are guilty of. So this is what is actually triggering our country to get worse. Crime, it's really affecting the country. It's looking bad internationally.
I remember when I was in college, many years ago, of course. And from my experience, I think it has come to be true. You put a bad person in a good system, it won't work. But you put a good person in a bad system, it can work. The Constitution, I was around, yes, in 1981. I was privy to have a look at the white paper, which formed the basis of the Constitution. And I had worked it myself because I was a public officer for 20 years. And then I went into elective office as a mayor and a representative and minister. So I had to work the Constitution. And I do support the review of the Constitution. I think it's prudent for every human institution to have periodical evaluation of performance and see where you have weaknesses and what you do about it. But I ask the question, what is in this Constitution, or what is not in it that should have been there, that maybe cause the level of poverty we have, that cause the level of crime and corruption, which in my judgment, don't tell me that 40 years is too short. It's not 40 years, it's 100 of years. Because there was those before us that we should have learned from.
In 2020, we set up a Ministry of Diaspora Relations. And that ministry is also a part of the portfolio of the Minister of Tourism as well. So what I would like to know, and forgive me if there has been exercises that I don't know of, the inclusion of representatives of the diaspora, the Belize diaspora, which is a very, very large population. And when I say diaspora, I mean the vast majority are in the United States, and smaller sectors are in Canada, Europe, the Caribbean. We have, through the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, we have honorary consuls, Belize honorary consuls in various parts of the United States. We also have other representatives of the Belize government in various parts of the United States as well. To what extent Are we capturing their opinions, their contributions, their suggestions, etc., as we go about this exercise? And is there any approach to them from this particular level in various quarters of the United States? Or maybe we're doing it virtually? I don't know. I don't know if we want to discuss what approach has been made to the diaspora and what representation do they have in terms of their input into this exercise. Thank you.
I'm not sure if marijuana is legalized. It's not legalized, right? Marijuana. I think you're allowed to have like how many grams? Decriminalized. How many grams are you allowed to? I see becoming a major contribution to violence. Here in Kamalote, we is known for sports. We love sports. We have football, we have softball, and these young people, man, they in the public. I think it's illegal. Is it illegal to smoke in the public?
I'm not familiar with the law, but probably it is. Just like how drinking in the public, you shouldn't, be drinking in the public as such.
Right, because people come out to their kids and their family, and these guys on the bleachers, and it's like, man, what's going on? And like nobody, I don't know if nobody care. Enforcement, the law is there, but people are not enforcing it. And that's a major concern for me, because we're heading destroying our young people because these guys are smoking like cigarette, man. And I say that from what I know, they can do it in their home or in their yard, but in a public, it's a no-no in the public. So that's one of my major concerns for me,
I will quote that person. He said, it seems that people from urban areas, urban city, town, might be moving more to rural villages. Well, there's no data for that, but we could sense that probably, and I will leave it there. I'm not sure about it. But living a rural life is totally different than a city or town life. That's a fact. We cannot change that. But once rural people live in rural areas, they adapt to that type of system. Much slowly things move, and which is fine. We don't want that change. You don't want your village to become a city, because a lot of things change. And I suspect what I'm going towards is that when there is a crime in the village, as a rural person, you want that to be addressed. Probably 20, 30 years, you told that to the elder, the villager, and he addressed it. Now you probably report that to some people, and right there, finish. Nothing happens. The crime continue.
We continue to wait on the ICJ for one, and that is taking a toll on what is happening right now within the Star Stone and stuff like that. It's like you're just feeding the fire until something explodes. The other thing that what we're doing also, we're going to America and different countries to deal with our own situation here, where we could control and we could have a say and we could put down our foot and say, this is what is going to happen and that is not going to happen. We have the different ethnic groups fighting with each other in PG right now as we speak. And if they don't put a stop to it right now, we're going to lose life, and many life. It's just a ticking bomb. And these are something that the ministers or the prime minister, whosoever, could always come up and say, no, this is going to happen and we're going to do it like this. But they send these issues way to America, when we could deal with a lot of our things that is happening right here within our country.
There's only so much the chairman can do. We always look at the bad things and we overlook the good stuff that we're trying to do. A lot of times the chairman, he would try. Like, people bring up their comments to us. We have our monthly meetings. We bring up these comments. But like I said, there is only so much he could do. He mentioned a lot of the things to the minister, but sometimes it's not, like, it's problems not based on, like, has to do with our representative, Mr. Julius. It has to do with, like, BEL and those stuff, like access to light, access to water. So they do bring up these things, but it's a matter of time. Everything takes a process, no? So we can't just say that, oh, because he's the minister, he will get this stuff done right away. No, everything takes a process, no? So
to make mention of something in particular, because as I ponder this whole exercise of constitutional reform, I ask myself, do we even know our Constitution? So how are we asking to start a reform when we're not even aware of what is in the Constitution?
The laws and policies to be refined over the time rather than to be replaced outright. We end off by extending our heartfelt gratitude to everyone who made it possible and to all who participated in the enlightening Know Your Rights discussion, and also those who joined live stream via Facebook. Your presence, whether physical or...
It's time for you, me, and all our way to live the best life in our country. It's time for you, me, and we pick me to achieve the best life in our country. Oh yeah, hay que mejorar la vida de todos los beliceños. It's time for you, me, and all our way to live the best life in our country. It's time for you.